Elena Voss stood in the great hall of the Blackwood Pack, her hands shaking at her sides. The room was full of wolves, all of them watching her, waiting to see what their alpha king would say. She had felt the pull the moment she walked in. It was warm and strong, like a rope tied around her heart, drawing her straight to him. Damian Blackwood, the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories, stood tall on the raised platform at the front of the hall. His eyes met hers, and for one heartbeat, Elena thought she saw something soft flicker across his face. Then it was gone. "Mate," she whispered, barely able to believe the word as it left her lips. It was her 18th birthday, the night every wolf waited for, the night the bond was supposed to reveal itself. She had dreamed of this moment her whole life. Damian's jaw tightened. He looked at her the way someone looks at a stranger who has interrupted an important meeting. "You are mistaken," he said, his voice cold and flat enough to silence the whispers spreading through the crowd. "I reject this bond. She is not fit to stand beside a king." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She stumbled back, her chest tight, her throat burning. The entire hall fell silent, and then the whispers started again, sharper this time, crueler. Someone laughed, someone else muttered the word weak. Elena did not cry, not there, not in front of them. She held her head high, even as her heart cracked into pieces, and she turned and walked out of the hall without another word. But that night, guards came to her small house at the edge of the territory and told her she had until sunrise to leave Blackwood Land forever. "Orders from the king," they said. No explanation, no mercy. She left before the sun rose, carrying only a small bag and the ache of a rejection she did not understand. She did not know, and would not know for a long time, that Damian's decision had not been entirely his own. His council, led by the ambitious and calculating Beta Corwin, had warned him the night before that Elena carried the blood of the Thornhart line, an old and powerful family the Blackwoods had fought against for generations. Corwin had convinced Damian that accepting her would divide the pack and threaten his throne. Damian, young and afraid of losing the loyalty he had worked so hard to earn, chose his crown over his heart. It was a choice that would haunt him for years. Elena wandered for 3 days with little food and no shelter, surviving on sheer will alone. On the 4th day, exhausted and half-frozen, she collapsed near the border of Ashbourne territory, the land of the Blackwoods' oldest rivals. She expected to die there, alone in the frost. Instead, she woke to the sound of low voices and the warmth of a fire. An elderly wolf named Alpha Reed Ashbourne had found her. He was known across the territories as a fair and thoughtful leader, nothing like the fierce and ruthless image the Blackwood Pack had painted of him. When Elena finally told him her story, stumbling over the pain of it, Reed did not turn her away. "You have been treated unjustly," he said simply. "You may stay here, and you may build a new life if you choose to." For the first time since her rejection, Elena felt something other than grief. She felt possibility. The years that followed were not easy. Elena trained harder than anyone in the Ashbourne Pack, pushing her body and her instincts until she could hold her own against seasoned warriors twice her size. She studied pack law, territory strategy, and the old traditions Reed taught her patiently, evening after evening. She made mistakes. She fell more times than she could count, but she never stopped getting back up. Slowly, the wolves of Ashbourne began to respect her, then to admire her, and eventually to trust her completely. She earned her place not because of her bloodline, but because of who she chose to become. She was kind to the pack's youngest members, patient with the elders, and fiercely loyal to anyone who needed protection. She became, in every way that mattered, a leader. When Alpha Reed grew ill in her 3rd year with the pack, he called Elena to his chambers. His body was weak, but his eyes were clear and certain. "My own children do not have the heart for this position," he told her gently. "But you do, Elena. You have earned this seat with sweat and sacrifice, not simply by an accident of birth. I want you to lead this pack after I am gone." Elena wept at his bedside, overwhelmed by the weight of his trust. When Reed passed peacefully weeks later, the pack gathered to honor his wishes, and Elena Voss was crowned Queen of the Ashbourne Pack. The girl who had once been called unworthy now wore a crown earned through years of quiet strength. She ruled with fairness and care, and under her leadership, Ashbourne grew stronger than it had been in decades. Trade improved, training grounds expanded. The pack's borders, once vulnerable, became well protected. Elena never forgot where she came from, and she never let bitterness rule her decisions. Even though the memory of that humiliating night in the Blackwood Hall still sometimes returned to her in quiet moments. Meanwhile, in the years since Elena's banishment, Damien Blackwood had become a very different kind of king. His pack had grown in power under his rule, but something in him had grown cold and distant as well. He rejected every potential match his council presented, unable to explain even to himself why none of them ever felt right. At night, he sometimes dreamed of a young woman with steady brown eyes and a voice that trembled with hope, and he would wake with a hollow ache in his chest that he refused to name. He told himself he had made the right choice for his pack. He told himself many times, but the words never quite settled into peace. Tensions between the Blackwood and Ashbourne territories had simmered for years, old rivalries kept alive by pride and mistrust on both sides. When a dispute over shared hunting grounds threatened to boil into open conflict, the Regional Council of Alphas called for a peace summit, insisting that the two most powerful packs in the north settle their differences at the negotiating table instead of the battlefield. Damien arrived at the summit with Corwin at his side, expecting to face Ashbourne's usual representatives, seasoned wolves he had negotiated with before. Instead, when the doors to the meeting hall opened, a young woman walked in wearing the deep green colors of Ashbourne royalty, a circlet resting on her brow, her posture straight and commanding. Damien's breath caught in his throat. It was her. 3 years had changed Elena in every visible way. She no longer carried herself with the uncertain hope of a girl waiting to be accepted. She moved like someone who belonged exactly where she stood, her expression calm, her eyes sharp with an authority that silenced the room before she even spoke a word. And yet, beneath the crown and the confidence, Damien recognized her instantly. He would have known her anywhere. The pull of the bond, the one he had denied for 3 long years, surged back to life the moment their eyes met, stronger than he remembered, impossible to ignore. Alpha Blackwood, Elena said evenly, taking her seat at the head of the Ashbourne delegation. Her voice did not waver. Let us begin. Damien struggled to find his own voice. The last time they had stood in a room together, he had called her unfit for a throne. Now she sat across from him wearing one, having built it entirely on her own, without his help, without his name, without the crown he had denied her. The negotiations were tense from the very first exchange. Elena was sharp, prepared, and utterly unwilling to be intimidated. Every argument Corwin raised, she countered with calm precision, presenting facts and history that left the Blackwood delegation scrambling. She fought for her people's rights to the hunting grounds with a fierce dedication that impressed even the neutral council members observing the summit. Damien found himself watching her more than he was listening to the arguments themselves. He saw the leader she had become, and beneath the ache of regret, something like pride stirred in him too, confusing and unwelcome. During a break in the talks, Damien found Elena standing alone on a balcony overlooking the mountains, the wind pulling at her dark hair. He approached slowly, unsure of what he even wanted to say. Elena, he began. She did not turn around. It is Queen Voss now, Alpha Blackwood. I know. He stopped a respectful distance away. I owe you an apology. More than one. What I did to you that night was cruel, and it was wrong. Elena finally turned to face him, her expression unreadable. You did not simply reject a bond, Damien. You sent guards to force me from my home with nothing. You left me to survive alone, with no warning and no explanation. I nearly died in the cold before Alpha Reed found me. Damien's face paled. He had never known the details of what happened to her after her banishment, only that she had disappeared from Blackwood land and, somehow, resurfaced years later as Ashbourne's queen. Hearing it laid out so plainly struck him harder than any blow in battle. I did not know, he said quietly. I told myself you had gone somewhere safe. I never let myself imagine what actually happened. That was your choice too, Elena replied, though her voice had softened just slightly. Not knowing was easier than facing what you had done. They stood in silence for a long moment, the mountain wind moving between them. "I was told your bloodline threatened my throne," Damien admitted finally. "Corwin convinced me the pack would turn against me if I accepted you. I was young and afraid, and I let that fear decide for me. It does not excuse what I did. Nothing excuses it. But I want you to know the truth." Elena studied him carefully, searching his face for the deception she had once trusted so completely, and found only weary honesty staring back at her. It did not erase 3 years of hardship, but it did shift something inside her, a small crack in the wall she had built so carefully around her heart. "I am not the same person you rejected," she said finally. "I built a life without you. I built a kingdom without you. I do not need your throne, Damien, and I will not be pulled back into being someone who waits for your approval." "I am not asking you to be that person again," Damien said. "I would never ask that of you. I am only asking for the chance to know the queen you have become, if you will allow it." The negotiations continued over the following days, and slowly, carefully, something began to shift between the two packs. Elena proved herself an unshakable negotiator, securing fair terms for her people, while still finding common ground with Blackwood's delegation. Damien, for his part, began listening more than he spoke, learning from her instead of trying to control the conversation, a change his own council noticed with quiet surprise. When the truth about Corwin's manipulation years earlier came fully to light during the talks, revealed through old records Elena had uncovered during her research into the Thornheart history, the Blackwood Council was shaken. Damien confronted Corwin publicly, stripping him of his position for the deception that had cost so much pain. It was not a perfect resolution, but it was an honest one, and honesty, Elena realized, was something she had never truly received from Damien before. The peace summit ended not with the reluctant truce the council had expected, but with a genuine alliance between the two packs, the first in generations. Trade routes opened. Old grudges began, slowly, to soften, and between Elena and Damien, something new and fragile began to grow, not the desperate hope of a girl waiting to be chosen, but a cautious respect between two equals, built on honesty instead of blind loyalty. Elena did not return to Blackwood Land, and she did not give up her crown. She remained Queen of Ashbourne, ruling her pack with the same strength and fairness that had earned her the throne in the first place, but she allowed Damien, slowly and on her own terms, back into her life, not as the king who had once cast her aside, but as someone working to become worthy of the mate bond he had once so carelessly denied. Their story did not end with a fairy tale reunion or a rushed forgiveness. It ended with something more honest than that. Two people, both changed by loss and hardship, choosing each day whether to build something new together, one careful step at a time. Elena had once been told she was not fit for a throne. Now she sat upon one entirely her own, and for the first time, she understood that her worth had never depended on anyone else's approval at all. It had been hers all along,